The sting on my cheek burned less than the betrayal in my heart. My sister Vanessa stood over me, her hand still raised, eyes blazing with manufactured rage. "You have 10 minutes to leave my house, Serafina. 10 minutes before I call the police." The dining room fell silent except for the ticking grandfather clock that had belonged to our grandmother. Our entire family sat frozen. Mom, Dad, Uncle Marcus, Aunt Gloria. All staring as if I were the villain in this perfectly orchestrated scene. But I knew something they did not. Hidden in my purse was a USB drive containing bank records that would expose the real criminal at this table. Before I dive into this family nightmare, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. If this story about family betrayal and ultimate revenge resonates with you, smash that like button and subscribe because you will not believe the shocking twist coming up. Trust me, what happens next will make you question everything you think you know about blood loyalty and family bonds. 3 months earlier, I had been living my quiet life as a forensic accountant in downtown Seattle, completely unaware that my own family was about to become my most challenging case. It started innocuously enough when Mom called, her voice trembling with worry about Dad's medical bills. "The cancer treatments are so expensive, honey. We might lose the house." I immediately offered to help review their finances, something I had done countless times for clients, but never for family. What I discovered in their financial records made my blood run cold. Over the past 2 years, someone had been systematically draining their retirement accounts, medical savings, and even the fund they had set aside for my grandmother's care before she passed. The transfers were sophisticated, designed to look like legitimate medical expenses or home repairs. But my trained eye caught the inconsistencies. The amounts, the timing, the receiving accounts. It all pointed to one devastating conclusion. Someone with intimate knowledge of my parents' finances and access to their accounts was stealing from them during their most vulnerable time. My hands shook as I traced the money trail. Each fraudulent transaction felt like a personal attack. The receiving account belonged to a shell company called Evergreen Family Solutions. A quick search revealed it was registered to an address that made my stomach drop. Vanessa's neighborhood. I spent sleepless nights digging deeper, cross-referencing dates and amounts. The pattern became clear. Whenever Dad had a chemotherapy session within days, money would disappear from their accounts. When Mom mentioned needing to pay for a specialist, suddenly their savings would be lighter. It was predatory, calculated, and absolutely heartless. The most damaging evidence came when I accessed the business registration records. Evergreen Family Solutions was not just registered near Vanessa's house. She was listed as the sole proprietor, my own sister. The one who had been playing the concerned daughter at every family gathering was systematically robbing our parents while they fought for Dad's life. But the theft went beyond mere money. I discovered forged signatures on insurance claims, falsified medical bills submitted to their Medicare, and even a fraudulent loan taken out against their house. Vanessa had been using her position as Mom and Dad's financial helper to steal nearly $200,000 over 2 years. The betrayal cut deeper than any physical wound. This was the sister who had held my hand during thunderstorms as a child, who had been my maid of honor, who called herself Dad's little princess. She had weaponized their trust and love, turning their medical crisis into her personal ATM. As I compiled the evidence, memories began clicking into place. Vanessa's sudden lifestyle upgrade, her new luxury car, the expensive renovations to her house, the designer clothes she claimed were investment pieces. All of it funded by our parents' suffering. I realized I needed more than just bank records to build an airtight case. I started documenting everything, taking photos of her purchases, recording conversations where she complained about their financial burden while secretly profiting from it. The hypocrisy was staggering. The worst part was watching our parents blame themselves for their financial struggles. Dad would apologize for being sick for costing the family money. Mom would skip her own medications to save cash. Meanwhile, Vanessa would pat their hands sympathetically and offer to help manage their finances better, all while planning her next theft. I knew I had to be strategic about exposing this. Vanessa was not just a thief. She was manipulative and cunning. She had spent 2 years perfecting her victim act, positioning herself as the devoted daughter, sacrificing to help the family. If I came forward without irrefutable proof, she would find a way to turn it around, make me look like the jealous sister making false accusations. So I kept gathering evidence, building my case like I would for any client. But this time, the stakes were not just professional. This was about saving my family and bringing a predator to justice. I decided the family Christmas dinner would be the perfect stage for exposing Vanessa. She loved an audience, always playing the martyr in front of relatives. I figured if she was going to perform, she might as well have a full house for her final act. 2 weeks before the dinner, I made my first strategic move. I called a family meeting under the guise of discussing Dad's care plan. As we sat around Vanessa's dining table, the same table where she would later slap me, I began laying my trap. I have been thinking about how we can better support Mom and Dad financially. I started watching Vanessa's face carefully. Maybe we should all contribute to a centralized fund that someone trustworthy can manage. Vanessa immediately objected. That is not necessary, Serafina. I have been handling their finances just fine. They trust me completely. The emphasis on me was telling. I am sure they do, I replied smoothly. But would not it be better to have multiple people involved? More oversight means better protection against any potential issues. Her eyes flashed with something dangerous. What are you implying? Nothing at all. I just think transparency is important when dealing with someone else's money. Uncle Marcus nodded approvingly. Serafina has a point. Multiple signatures, regular audits. That is how we handle things at the company. I watched Vanessa's composure crack slightly. Are you suggesting I cannot be trusted with my own parents' finances? Of course not, I said, maintaining my innocent tone. I am just thinking about best practices. After all, you have been carrying this burden alone for so long. Would not it be nice to have help? That was when she made her first major mistake. Instead of graciously accepting help, she became defensive and territorial. She insisted that she was the only one qualified to handle their finances, that introducing other people would just complicate things. But I was not done setting my trap. Over the next 2 weeks, I began asking pointed questions. Where exactly was the money going? Could we see the medical bills? What about the insurance claims? Each question was designed to back her into a corner. Vanessa responded by becoming increasingly hostile toward me. She started telling other family members that I was being difficult and suspicious during Dad's treatment. She painted me as the selfish sister who only showed up to criticize instead of help. This character assassination was exactly what I had expected. It was a classic move from someone with something to hide. Attack the credibility of anyone asking questions. But I let her dig her own grave, documenting every lie and deflection. The real breakthrough came when I discovered something that made my blood boil. Vanessa had been telling our extended family that she was personally paying for Dad's treatments. She had set up a GoFundMe page claiming she needed help covering his medical expenses. Relatives from across the country had been sending money thinking they were helping Dad when they were actually funding Vanessa's lifestyle. The GoFundMe alone had raised over $15,000. Combined with the stolen funds, she had essentially profited from Dad's cancer diagnosis. It was beyond theft. It was moral bankruptcy on a level I had never encountered even in my professional work with white-collar criminals. I printed out every transaction, every forged document, every fraudulent claim. I organized it into a presentation that would make a prosecutor weep with joy. But more importantly, I prepared copies for every family member who would be at that Christmas dinner. As the dinner approached, Vanessa became increasingly paranoid. She started asking leading questions about my work, trying to figure out if I had discovered anything. She even suggested that maybe I should not come to Christmas dinner, claiming she was worried about family tension during the holidays. But I assured her I would be there. After all, I had some very important news to share with everyone. The night before the dinner, I received a call that changed everything. It was Mrs. Patterson, our elderly neighbor who had known our family for decades. She was crying as she told me that Vanessa had approached her about borrowing money for Dad's treatments. She said your parents were too proud to ask for help directly. Mrs. Patterson sobbed. I gave her $3,000 from my pension. Was that wrong? My heart broke for this sweet woman who had been manipulated into parting with her limited income. But it also gave me the final piece of evidence I needed. Vanessa was not just stealing from our immediate family. She was expanding her fraud network to include anyone who cared about us. That phone call sealed her fate. The next day, I would not just be exposing a thief. I would be stopping a predator who was weaponizing love and concern to fund her greed. The morning of the Christmas dinner, I made a series of phone calls that would change the trajectory of our entire family dynamic. But first, I needed allies who could help me handle the aftermath of what I was about to unleash. My first call was to my cousin, Detective Riley Morrison, from the Financial Crimes Unit. Riley and I had grown up together, and she had always been the moral compass of our extended family. When I explained what I had discovered, her professional instincts kicked in immediately. Jesus, Serafina. This is elder abuse fraud, identity theft, and insurance fraud rolled into one nightmare, she said after reviewing the evidence I sent her. But we need to be careful about how we handle this. If Vanessa realizes we are onto her, she might destroy evidence or transfer the remaining funds offshore. Riley helped me understand the legal implications and potential criminal charges Vanessa would face. More importantly, she agreed to be present at the dinner, not as a police officer initially, but as family support. Her presence would prevent Vanessa from destroying evidence or making threats. My second ally was unexpected but crucial. Marcus Rodriguez, the private investigator I had worked with on complex financial cases. When I explained the situation, he offered to help pro bono, because elder abuse cases hit close to home for him. My own grandmother was scammed out of her life savings, he told me. These predators count on family loyalty to protect them. They know victims will not want to send their own children to prison. Marcus had been conducting his own investigation parallel to mine. He had surveillance photos of Vanessa making luxury purchases on the same days money disappeared from our parents' accounts. He had recordings of her bragging to friends about her investment strategies, while our parents struggled with medical bills. But the most damaging evidence Marcus uncovered was a recorded conversation between Vanessa and her husband David. In it, she laughed about how easy it was to manipulate the old fools and discussed plans to take out another loan against their house before the cancer kills the old man anyway. That recording made me physically sick, but it also strengthened my resolve. This was not just about money anymore. It was about protecting our parents' dignity and ensuring that predators like Vanessa faced consequences. My third ally emerged from an unexpected source. Jennifer Kim, a social worker who specialized in elder abuse cases, had been referred to me by Riley. When I shared the evidence with Jennifer, she immediately recognized the sophisticated nature of Vanessa's scheme. "This is not opportunistic theft," Jennifer explained during our meeting. "This is premeditated financial abuse with psychological manipulation components. Your sister has been grooming your parents for years, positioning herself as their financial savior, while systematically destroying their economic security." Jennifer helped me understand the emotional trauma our parents would experience when the truth came out. She provided strategies for supporting them through the aftermath and connecting them with victim services. But perhaps my most important ally was someone much closer to home: Aunt Gloria, Dad's younger sister. Gloria had always been suspicious of Vanessa's sudden wealth and lifestyle changes. When I approached her with evidence, her reaction surprised me. "I have been wondering about this for months," she admitted. The timeline never made sense. She claimed to be struggling financially while buying a new car and renovating her house. Plus, she always seemed to know exactly when your parents needed money, almost like she had access to their accounts. Gloria revealed that she had been quietly documenting Vanessa's behavior for the past year. She had photos, receipts, and even recordings of conversations where Vanessa contradicted herself about the family's financial situation. "I was afraid to say anything because I did not have proof," Gloria explained. "But I have been keeping records just in case." Together, we had built an ironclad case against Vanessa. But more importantly, we had created a support network for our parents when their world came crashing down. The plan was simple but effective. During dinner, I would present the evidence systematically, starting with the bank records and building to the most damaging revelations. Riley would be there to handle any legal concerns. Marcus would provide additional evidence if needed. Jennifer would help support our parents emotionally, and Gloria would serve as a trusted family voice confirming the allegations. We also prepared for Vanessa's likely responses. She would probably deny everything initially, then try to claim she was borrowing the money temporarily, then attempt to turn the family against me for attacking her during the holidays. We had counter-evidence for every possible defense she might mount. But as I drove to Vanessa's house that evening, I felt a mix of anticipation and dread. I was about to destroy our family dynamic forever. Even though it was the right thing to do, even though our parents deserved justice, I knew that Christmas dinner would be the last time we would all be together as a family. The weight of that responsibility was crushing. But every time I thought about Dad apologizing for being sick, while Vanessa profited from his suffering, my resolve strengthened. Some betrayals are so profound that they cannot be forgiven or forgotten. As I pulled into Vanessa's driveway, I noticed her new luxury SUV parked prominently in front of the garage. The irony was not lost on me. She had bought it with money stolen from our dying father, and she was flaunting it at a family gathering. Tonight the bill would come due. The dinner started exactly as I had planned. Vanessa played the perfect hostess, fussing over Dad's comfort and making a show of how much she had spent on the meal. "I just want everything to be perfect for our family," she announced, her voice dripping with false sentiment. I waited until dessert was served before I made my move. "Actually, I have something important to share with everyone tonight." I began pulling out my folder of evidence. I have been helping Mom and Dad review their finances, and I discovered some concerning irregularities. The room fell silent. Vanessa's fork froze halfway to her mouth, but she quickly recovered. "What kind of irregularities?" she asked, her tone carefully neutral. I spread the bank statements across the table methodically. Over the past 2 years, nearly $200,000 has been transferred from Mom and Dad's accounts to a company called Evergreen Family Solutions. The timing of these transfers coincides perfectly with Dad's treatment schedule. Dad leaned forward, confusion clouding his features. "I do not understand. What company?" "That is my business," Vanessa said quickly. "I set it up to help manage family expenses more efficiently. Everything I did was with your best interests in mind. But I was ready for that defense. Then why are there forged signatures on insurance claims? Why were luxury car payments made from this family expense account? And why did you tell everyone you were personally paying for Dad's treatments while secretly billing them to his Medicare?" The evidence was overwhelming. Marcus provided the surveillance photos showing Vanessa's shopping sprees on the same days money disappeared. Riley confirmed that several of the documents contained forged signatures. Gloria shared her own documentation of Vanessa's contradictory statements about the family's finances. As the truth sank in, our parents looked devastated. Mom started crying silently while Dad just stared at the evidence in disbelief. "You stole from us while I was fighting for my life," he whispered. But then something unexpected happened that nearly destroyed everything I had worked for. Uncle Marcus, who had been quietly reviewing the documents, suddenly spoke up. "Wait a minute," he said, his voice carrying authority. "Serafina, some of these transactions look familiar. Did not you have power of attorney over your parents' finances last year?" My blood ran cold. Marcus was right. I had briefly held power of attorney while Dad was in intensive care. Vanessa had insisted on taking it over when he recovered, claiming it would be easier since she lived closer. Vanessa's eyes lit up with malicious triumph. "That is right, Serafina had complete access to their accounts. How do we know she is not trying to frame me for her own crimes?" The room erupted in confusion. Suddenly, family members who had been sympathizing with our parents were looking at me with suspicion. Even Gloria seemed uncertain, glancing between Vanessa and me with worry. "This is exactly what someone would do," Vanessa continued, her voice gaining confidence. "Create fake companies, plant evidence, then blame the innocent person. Serafina has always been jealous of my relationship with Mom and Dad. She probably saw an opportunity to steal from them and make me look like the villain." I felt my carefully constructed case crumbling around me. Detective Riley tried to intervene, explaining that the evidence was too sophisticated to be planted, but Vanessa was on a roll. "Of course she would bring a police officer," Vanessa said with a bitter laugh. "This whole thing is a setup. She probably promised Riley some kind of reward for backing up her story." The most devastating blow came when David, Vanessa's husband, suddenly produced what appeared to be bank records showing suspicious activity from my own accounts. "I have been worried about this for months," he said solemnly. "Vanessa kept telling me she thought something was wrong, but she did not want to accuse family without proof." I stared at the documents in horror. They showed transfers from my business account to offshore holdings that I had never made. The dates corresponded with some of the missing money from our parents' accounts. It was a masterful frame job, clearly prepared in advance for exactly this scenario. "You see," Vanessa said, her voice now filled with righteous indignation, "she has been stealing from her own clients too. This whole presentation tonight was just her trying to pin her crimes on me before I could expose her." The family looked back and forth between us, uncertain who to believe. Our parents appeared shell-shocked, unable to process that one of their daughters was a criminal. They just could not tell which one. Riley tried to point out inconsistencies in David's evidence, but the damage was done. Vanessa had successfully created reasonable doubt about my accusations. Worse, she had turned the tables so effectively that I now looked like the primary suspect. "I think everyone should leave," Vanessa said firmly. "This has been traumatic enough for Mom and Dad without having to watch their daughter try to destroy their family with lies." But then she made the critical error that would ultimately seal her fate. In her moment of triumph, her mask slipped completely. "Serafina, you have always been nothing but trouble for this family," she snarled, her voice filled with genuine venom. "You could not stand seeing me succeed, could you? You could not handle that. Mom and Dad trusted me more than they trusted you." And that was when she slapped me. Hard. The sound echoed through the dining room like a gunshot. "You have 10 minutes to leave my house before I call the police and have you arrested for theft and fraud," she said, standing over me with her hand still raised. But I was not broken. I was furious, and I still had one card left to play. As I sat there with my cheek stinging from Vanessa's slap, I realized that her moment of triumph had just become her downfall. Because Marcus Rodriguez had been recording everything through a hidden camera disguised as a pen in his shirt pocket. But more importantly, David's fake evidence had confirmed something I had suspected, but could never prove. They had been planning this frame job for months. That level of premeditation would make their crimes even more serious in the eyes of the law. 10 minutes, Serafina," Vanessa repeated, glancing at the clock. "I am done protecting this family from your lies." I stood up slowly, making a show of gathering my papers. But instead of heading for the door, I walked over to the grandfather clock that had been ticking throughout this entire confrontation. "You know what, Vanessa? You are absolutely right. It is time for the truth to come out." I reached behind the clock and retrieved the small recording device I had hidden there before dinner. The room went dead silent as I held up the device. "This has been recording for the past 3 hours. Every word, every admission, including your husband producing fabricated evidence and your confession that you have been planning to frame me for months." Vanessa's face went white. "That is illegal. You cannot record people in their own home without permission." "Actually," Riley said, standing up with her badge now visible, "in Washington state, only one party needs to consent to recording a conversation. Serafina consented. But more importantly, conspiracy to commit fraud just became the least of your problems." I pressed play on the device, and David's voice filled the room. "I have been worried about this for months. Vanessa kept telling me she thought something was wrong, but she did not want to accuse family without proof." "Funny thing about that statement, David," I said calmly. "If Vanessa really suspected me of theft months ago, why did she continue to let our parents trust me with their finances? Why did she not report it to the police immediately? Unless, of course, she needed time to create fake evidence." The recording continued playing, capturing Vanessa's escalating hostility and her admission that she had been monitoring our parents' trust in me. But the most damaging part was yet to come. Just then, my phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. He had been working on one final piece of evidence while we were having dinner. What I read made my heart race with anticipation. "Actually, we have even bigger problems than fake bank records," I announced. "Marcus, would you like to share what you discovered about that GoFundMe account?" Marcus pulled out his laptop and turned it toward the family. On the screen was Vanessa's GoFundMe page, but with additional information overlaid showing where the money had actually gone. The $15,000 donated by friends and family for your father's medical treatments, Marcus began, was never used for medical expenses. Instead, it was transferred to the same offshore account that David just claimed belongs to Serafina. The room exploded with gasps and angry voices. Aunt Gloria stood up, her face flushed with rage. You mean all the money we sent to help with medical bills went into your personal account? But Marcus was not finished. What is more, I traced the ownership of those offshore accounts. They belonged to a company registered in David's name in the Cayman Islands. The same David who just accused Serafina of using offshore accounts to hide stolen money. David had been caught using his own money laundering operation to frame me. The irony was almost poetic. You see, I continued, Vanessa and David created fake evidence by using their own criminal infrastructure. They thought they could pin their offshore money laundering on me, but they forgot that financial crimes leave digital footprints. Riley was already on her phone calling for backup units. This has escalated beyond family drama, she announced. We are now looking at conspiracy to commit fraud, money laundering, elder abuse, and obstruction of justice. But I had one more revelation that would destroy any remaining sympathy for Vanessa. I pulled out a transcript of the conversation Marcus had recorded between Vanessa and David. I want everyone to hear exactly how Vanessa really feels about our father's illness, I said, reading from the transcript. Quote, the cancer is actually perfect timing. The old fool will die soon anyway, and we can take out another loan against the house before anyone realizes what happened. Mom gasped in horror. Dad looked like he had been punched in the stomach. The cruelty of those words, the casual dismissal of his life, hit harder than any financial evidence could. She was not just stealing money, I continued. She was actively hoping for Dad's death so she could steal even more. That was when Dad finally spoke, his voice barely above a whisper, but filled with absolute authority. Get out of my sight. Both of you. You are no longer my daughter. Vanessa tried one last desperate play. Dad, please let me explain. Serafina is twisting everything. I love you. I was trying to protect the family finances. But the evidence was overwhelming, and her credibility was destroyed. The recording had captured her own words, condemning her. The fake evidence had exposed David's complicity, and the offshore accounts had revealed the scope of their criminal operation. As Riley's backup units arrived to arrest Vanessa and David, I felt a mix of vindication and sadness. Justice was being served, but our family would never recover from this betrayal. However, the most important outcome was that Mom and Dad were finally safe. Their remaining assets would be recovered, the fraudulent insurance claims would be reversed, and they could focus on Dad's recovery without worrying about financial predators. Sometimes protecting the people you love requires destroying the family structure you grew up with. But as I watched Vanessa being led away in handcuffs, still protesting her innocence, I knew I had made the right choice. 6 months later, I sat in the courthouse listening as the judge read Vanessa's sentence. 7 years in federal prison for elder abuse, fraud, money laundering, and conspiracy. David received 5 years as a co-conspirator. The judge's words were particularly pointed when addressing the cruelty of their crimes. The defendants preyed upon the trust and vulnerability of elderly family members during a medical crisis, she said sternly. This represents a profound betrayal that strikes at the heart of family bonds and societal trust. The financial recovery exceeded our expectations. Federal agents had frozen the offshore accounts before Vanessa and David could move the money. Nearly $180,000 was returned to our parents. The GoFundMe donors were also refunded, though many chose to leave their donations as genuine gifts for Dad's care. But the healing process was more complex than simple financial restitution. Our parents struggled with the psychological trauma of realizing their trusted daughter had been systematically robbing them. They blamed themselves for being naive, for missing the warning signs, for trusting someone who saw their illness as a business opportunity. Jennifer Kim, the social worker who had helped build our case, continued working with Mom and Dad through victim counseling services. She helped them understand that they were not foolish. They were loving parents who had been manipulated by an expert predator. "Your only mistake was trusting your child," Jennifer told them during one session I attended. "That is not a character flaw. That is what good parents do." The most beautiful part of our recovery was watching our family rebuild around chosen loyalty rather than blood obligation. Aunt Gloria stepped up as our parents' primary financial advocate, working with me to establish proper oversight and transparency. Detective Riley became not just a cousin, but a trusted family protector who checked in regularly. Marcus Rodriguez, the private investigator who had helped expose Vanessa's crimes, became an unexpected family friend. He visited Dad during chemotherapy sessions, sharing stories from his cases and proving that not all families were built on deception. Even more meaningful was the support we received from our extended community. Mrs. Patterson, our elderly neighbor, organized meal trains and transportation help. Other families who had experienced elder abuse reached out to share their stories and offer encouragement. Dad's health improved dramatically once the financial stress was removed. His oncologist noted that eliminating the worry about medical bills had a measurable positive impact on his treatment response. "Stress is a significant factor in cancer recovery," she explained. "Removing that burden allows his body to focus on healing." Mom found her voice again. For years, she had deferred to Vanessa's expertise in financial matters, doubting her own instincts. Now, she actively participated in managing their recovered assets, asking questions, and demanding transparency. "I will never again let someone else control our money without oversight," she declared during a family meeting. Blood relation does not automatically equal trustworthiness. The legal proceedings also had broader implications. The prosecutor used our case as an example in elder abuse prevention seminars. Riley incorporated our experience into training programs for financial crimes investigators. Our story became part of a growing awareness campaign about family financial predators. But perhaps the most satisfying outcome was the unintended consequences for Vanessa's social circle. When her arrest became public, several of her friends realized they had also been targets of financial manipulation. Vanessa had borrowed money from multiple sources using fake sob stories about family medical expenses. Her entire social network collapsed as people realized they had been funding her lifestyle rather than helping a struggling family. Today, our family looks completely different than it did 2 years ago. We have regular financial meetings where every expense is transparent and every decision is collaborative. We have established an emergency fund that no single person controls. Most importantly, we have learned that love without accountability is not really love at all. Dad is now in remission. Mom has returned to volunteer work she loves. We have family dinners at different houses, always including our chosen family members who proved their loyalty during our darkest time. I still work as a forensic accountant, but now I specialize in elder abuse cases. Vanessa's betrayal showed me that financial predators often hide behind family relationships, making their crimes harder to detect and prosecute. I have helped dozens of families recover stolen assets and find justice. The grandfather clock from Vanessa's house now sits in our parents' living room. It was among the assets seized during the criminal proceedings, and the court allowed our parents to keep it since it had originally belonged to our grandmother. Its ticking no longer reminds me of that horrible dinner. Instead, it represents time moving forward, healing happening, and justice served. Some people ask if I ever regret exposing Vanessa, if I wish I could have found a way to handle it privately within the family. My answer is always the same. Protecting vulnerable people from predators is more important than protecting predators from consequences. Family loyalty should never be a shield for criminal behavior. Love should never be an excuse for theft. And trust should always be earned, not assumed, based on shared genetics. So let me ask you, have you ever faced a situation where doing the right thing meant betraying family expectations? Have you seen karma catch up with someone who thought they were untouchable? Share your thoughts in the comments below, because these conversations matter. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button to help others find it. Subscribe for more real-life stories about justice and redemption. And share this with anyone who needs to hear that protecting yourself and your loved ones is always the right choice, even when it is the hardest choice. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember, sometimes the family that chooses to stand by you is more valuable than the family that chooses to betray you. Truth always finds a way to surface, and justice might be delayed, but it is rarely denied.